Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. The day lived remains behind when you step across the threshold of the apartment. The door closes. Further, the bunch of keys rattles, carelessly thrown onto the console table in the hallway. The coat or jacket takes its usual place on the hanger, which has been here since the time of Jean's grandmother. Then the family of the young factory worker, the blacksmith Robert Peterson Miller, consisting of himself, his young wife Lizzie, Robert's mother, and their newborn daughter Mary, moved into the brand new, paint-smelling, concrete and dust-filled affordable housing. Grandpa Robert and Grandma Lydia are long gone. Their daughter Mary has already managed to give birth to 3 children and grow old in the same place, though it's almost the centre of the small town. And the 3 living rooms still impressed. The stairwell smelled of paint. It was dusty, especially in autumn and spring. In summer it was stuffy and hot, in winter cold. Out of the 3 rooms, Jean was constantly only in one, where he had lived since he was very young. He preferred not to touch the other 2, his grandmother's bedroom and the living room. He didn't change the decor or do renovations. He generally tried to keep the door to the second half of the apartment closed, not to go there, not to listen to its strange sounds. Everything here reminded him of a carefree childhood and youth. His grandmother's room was the farthest. Jean rarely went in there before. Towards the end of her life, his grandmother completely lost her mind. It seemed she was afraid of war or a blockade, neither of which she had lived through herself. But at the head of her bed, there was always a television box, filled to the brim with reserves of grains, pasta and sugar. On top, Grandma Lydia always placed feather pillows. She meticulously changed the pillowcases on them every week. Only after his grandmother's death did it turn out that she didn't protect the pillows just out of simple cleanliness. When they were sorting through things and furniture, it turned out that Grandma Lydia kept certain sums of money in every sweater, every mattress, and every duvet cover. It's a pity this wasn't discovered immediately. The first 500 rubles were found by the eldest, Nellie, when she shook out and gutted the old mattress. With this money, they gave his grandmother a decent burial, and there was some left for the memorial. That's what it means. She provided for herself. The large living room, the room in the centre of the apartment, used to be a bedroom, a living room, and a dining room. Noisy companies gathered here, Grandpa's friends, Grandma's friends, uncles and aunts. And then the sisters' fiancés and husbands started appearing, not for long, but even children came. The liveliest feasts were held here, memorials for unknown relatives and friends, New Year and all birthdays were celebrated. Guests slept here. Although the only sleeping places in the living room were sofas and a pull-out armchair, there was enough space for everyone. They slept on the floor, on inflatable mattresses, fitting onto blankets and throws. Jean loved holidays and came, but when there were interesting guests whom he liked and who liked him, Grandma Lydia never missed an opportunity to boast about her grandson's achievements. Jeannie got second place in the school French Olympiad. Jean was given a certificate today for excellent academic performance. Jean graduated from school with a gold medal. Our Jeannie got into law school just like we wanted, and on a scholarship without any tutors. At first, only his grandmother praised Jean out loud. Later, with age, his mother joined in, and when he met Marina, oh, that Marina. Everything with Marina started here, in this apartment, and it ended here too. He didn't want to remember his beloved grandmother. He didn't like immersing himself in the world of holidays, her childhood with a lot of guests. It was hateful and disgusting. His grandmother, with 3 grades of education, was proud of every good grade he got. She didn't understand that these grades weren't for knowledge, but just for his unusual intellect. Jean was simply a little smarter than an amoeba. He did his homework. He studied a lot. But when his grandmother and mother praised him, like now, he sometimes thought this was connected to his problems at work and in life. No one praised him anymore for completed tasks, for the hasty cleaning he did at home. No one was proud of his simple achievements, and that meant it became unnecessary to perform them. Marina praised him too. She was proud of him at every opportunity. They met back in school. Then 2 classes were merged, and Marina became a student in 7th B. She seemed much older, wore a strict school uniform, although it wasn't mandatory. Her hair was always pulled back in a braid or ponytail. Only on rare school holidays did she allow herself a hairstyle with her hair down, held back on both sides with an elastic band or clip. The strands were always neat. She was known as a bookworm in class, and they didn't like her. But Jean liked her right away. He especially loved her courage and confidence. Marina could argue with the literature teacher for half the lesson. The class would relax during this time. They could do their own things. And Jean listened to everything, how Ms. Olga Peterson marked down grades on another dictation. Thoughts and memories involuntarily visited Jean on particularly sad evenings when he wasn't very busy with work or, on the contrary, was overloaded. Today was just such an evening. Jean brought a pile of documents from work. He needed to familiarize himself with them, sort everything out, and then write the same volume of responses, opinions, and questions. There was no talk of happy weekends. So now, having quickly thrown off his jacket and shoes, Jean dived into the kitchen and pulled out the sandwiches from the refrigerator that were left over from the morning. He quickly brewed tea and moved to his room, the only one where traces of human presence remained. He didn't want to wake up. His whole body ached. Yesterday he hadn't closed the window. He wanted to air out the room, and he fell asleep like that. A damp wind, joined by a fine rain during the night, flew around the room all night. The windowsill was splashed with drops. Some got onto the table. Jean wrapped himself in the blanket, then burrowed into the throw as well. He didn't want to sleep, and he had no desire to get up. As soon as he put his feet off the bed, the world would completely engulf him, inevitably. Today he would have to throw the throw onto the sofa, wipe the table and windowsill, make coffee, which he would have to drink even without bread. After all the supplies were destroyed yesterday. This is how every day begins. He would have to somehow spend the time between morning and night, work with documents, go to the store, stare at his phone. Excellent plan, Jean thought, but first the store and then the documents. He often spoke his plans aloud. Today he dressed in casual clothes, only taking the jeans and hoodie that had been hanging on the drying rack since Monday. He smoothed his overgrown haircut with a comb. Instead of heavy boots, he took sneakers. He slung his backpack over his shoulder and headed towards the store. He wanted to take a walk in the morning. Raindrops kept falling from the sky, but this didn't spoil his overall mood at all. There were few people on the streets, and those who were there were hurrying to hide from the drizzle. It was cool, chilly. But if you put on your hood, you forget about it. It becomes cozy. You immediately feel protected, confident, as if you've conquered the elements. Approximately these thoughts overwhelmed Jean. He liked them, and to stay with them longer, he decided to walk to the shopping pavilion. He had spent most of his life in this city. He left for the capital for 3 years, improving his qualifications. But he couldn't continue working in a cool million-plus city. The huge distances scared him, the large buildings didn't let him breathe. The constant flow of people irritated him. It became unbearable. After trying his luck, Jean returned to his hometown, his native apartment. He was gladly accepted back at his old job. From this house, he had walked to school for 10 years, gone down the sidewalk, crossed the road. Every day, he walked past a huge, long building on Pushkin Street. That's when he learned it was a commune house. Jean had seen it in a history textbook. Along the building, almost every day in the morning, old women vendors sat, selling socks, napkins, mushrooms and berries from the nearby forest. There were also bundles of firewood, small souvenirs. With each year, there were fewer and fewer old women. Then they started being chased away. All this happened before Jean's eyes. A 2-story barracks. Marina used to live here with her mother. At 8:10 in the morning, Jean was already standing under her windows and waiting. Together, they went to school and then walked back the same way. When they started studying at the institute and both got into law, they walked in a different direction to Kommunisticheskaya Square. From there, they took the 17th bus to the final stop, the Institute of Law. Now Jean was also walking to the commune, as all the locals called it. In his 36 years, the road hadn't changed at all. Although a few tobacco shops had opened and the entrance to the park had been improved, the building remained in place. Further on, a new coffee shop in a foreign style, a lounge area, a co-working space, and in the same building, the Matriona store from Jean's childhood. And the sign was the same, and it seemed the same saleswoman, only older now. Again, an abandoned 1-story building, the former building of the Forestry Academy. The doors here have long been knocked out. There are no windows. And it's even less likely to notice that a human foot has definitely stepped here. In the evenings, groups of young people gather here who are now being driven away from the renovated stairwells. In winter, homeless people often find shelter here. Many in the city know that the academy used to have its own bunker, and novice diggers or adventure seekers often peek into the territory to get into the old shelters through the basement. Jean had been here too. In 10th grade, he invited Marina on a date. Of course, not to the abandoned building, but to a cafe. He had earned his first serious money then and decided to spend every last penny on the girl he loved. The fact that she was the one he loved was beyond doubt, but he couldn't express it eloquently, passionately. Marina always joked it off, saying they were too young to talk about love. And here was such an opportunity, romance, a cafe. She took about 3 hours to get ready, no less. Jean didn't know this. He went to pick her up at the appointed time. Before that, she had driven her mother crazy. What dress to wear? Or would it be better to go in jeans and this top? Marina chattered, trying on a short blue dress, then new school trousers. "You don't go on a date in trousers," her mother grumbled, "and you'll freeze in your top. You'll get kidney problems. It's not May outside." With great difficulty, Marina found dark tights, put on a denim skirt and a fitted wool sweater. Her mother knitted it. The hair question was quickly resolved. But things were worse with makeup. Marina had lipsticks and mascara. Her mother allowed her to wear makeup, but didn't know how to teach her. Marina redrew her eyeliner 10 times, then they all decided it was better without it. Then she put on mascara. Her eyelashes became unnaturally long and left marks on her eyelids when she blinked. Marina washed off the mascara. Her lipstick was pale pink, matching her skin tone. She decided to stick with lipstick and foundation. The foundation was too orange, giving her an unhealthy look. None of it was right. Finally, the lipstick. She had to give that up too because Marina literally ate it off her lips out of nervousness. "To hell with this makeup. If you can't do it, don't bother," she whispered to herself and leaned over the sink. She put on ordinary cream to protect her face from the wind. "You look simply charming today," Jean whispered to her, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Oh, you haven't even seen me with makeup." Marina, as always, joked. Jean wanted to kill her for that. Why ruin it? He was trying to make everything beautiful, like in movies, like all girls like, but that was Marina. They immediately ordered dessert, stretched it out for a long time, and drank tea. Marina told him about her failed attempts to dress up, how she drew and washed off her eyeliner, how she licked her lips and thickly applied lipstick. Jean listened and couldn't get enough. He wanted to say everything that had been hanging over Jean like a heavy burden of unspoken words for so long. And then they came out, cheerful, happy, heading towards her house. The sky was already overcast, and the rain was falling in large drops, gradually turning into either hail or snow. Expected for November in these latitudes. They almost ran across the square. The academy building had only recently become empty, and only the most resourceful had already taken a liking to it, and the boys had shot out the windows with slingshots. Overall, it was a perfect shelter in bad weather. "Let's stand under the roof," Jean suggested. "Let at least the hail stop." Marina agreed. They stood in the doorway, watching the large hailstones mixed with drops shatter on the asphalt. A heavy hailstone shattered at Jean's feet. He squeezed Marina's hand tighter and came closer. This scene could easily inspire a poet or artist. Half-ruined brick walls, an empty doorway against the background of the rustling rain. A couple, a boy and a girl, look at each other. She looks up from below, he leans towards her face. Just like that, without long words, soaked through, they were always together. "I love you and I'm not going to let you go, and if you laugh again—" He took another breath. "Please laugh. You can joke it off. I want you to hear this and know it always. I need you." He fell silent, either waiting for an answer or considering his words. "And I need you," Marina said with a smile. But her eyes seemed to shine differently, not with a childish smirk, but with some overly serious devotion, as if she had been waiting only for these words. And they didn't need loud speeches, beautiful dates, bright makeup, and ringing laughter. They just needed to be in the right place at the right time. Snow began to fall, mixing with the mud on the asphalt, but it didn't have time to completely melt. By Marina's house, the kids were already feeling the night frost. The wind changed sharply. Underfoot was an unclear mess, mud from the shoulders of the road, growing snowdrifts, puddles that hadn't frozen yet. "Want to come in and warm up? I wouldn't mind some tea either," Jean grinned. "And everything will be. There will be tea, and pastries too, and there will be a timid, but such a long kiss, a cold bed with rough white linen. In the morning, it will become the coziest in the world. In the morning, you won't want to get up and remember that you're a high school graduate with minutes to spare, not a hero of a romance novel." All this would be, or rather it was, now it was. Jean loves remembering that day and that year, a happy, carefree time. He dreamed so much that when he and Marina finished school, they could live like a real family. They would definitely move in with him. He would study, and in the evenings he would work part-time with his uncle. He was an electrician and already took on small repair jobs. And then they would definitely get married. And how happy he, Jean, would be when Marina said she was pregnant. Quiet family happiness. "Naive fool," he often tells himself now. "What happiness for you? What did you do to be worthy of it?" But now he walks and involuntarily remembers that day, that kiss, those plans for a lifetime that would never come true. In place of the cafe is now that same shopping pavilion, proudly called Palmyra. Opposite it is a children's hospital and some fast food joint inside a store with cheap clothes and cosmetics. And on the ground floor is a large supermarket. Gene walked here automatically. He threw standard groceries into the basket: sausage, bread, kefir. After thinking, he took a bottle of cognac from the shelf. He didn't know yet if he would drink it, but his hand reached for it on its own. And he went back for cheese, a few apples, a pack of cookies, a lemon. He loaded everything into his backpack. The way back no longer seemed so appealing. He got wet on the way here, and the air conditioning in the store had chilled him. Now the hoodie wasn't cozy, but disgusting. He wanted to get home quickly. Gene left the store, walking quickly towards his house. He found himself on the academy side again. He stepped into a puddle with his sneakers and stopped for a second to shake them off. A knock. Strange, like a hammer on a radiator from the inside. The blow repeated several more times, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. He went inside the dilapidated building. The sound was clearly audible here. They were hitting the radiators. But how could he guess where? For a minute, doubts overwhelmed Gene. Should he go in there? To reassure himself, he decided to check anyway. If it was a couple of questionable characters, he would just go on his way. But what if someone was stuck? There was no one on the first floor. Gene quickly reached the door to the basement. He turned on the flashlight on his phone. For some reason he yelled, "Hello!" and immediately cut himself off. What kind of hello? You're not lost in the woods. What should you yell in dark, abandoned basements? Probably, "Is anyone here?" What a stupid thought. If they're knocking, someone is there. "Where are you?" Gene shouted at the top of his lungs. "Do you need help?" "Yes." A thin, barely audible response suddenly came. "I'm here." And where is here? Gene thought to himself. Can you give me a location? Out loud he said, "Talk to me so I know where to go." "I don't know where to go," the same thin voice said, barely audible. "My leg hurts. There's a door here, painted with coloured paints. There's a devil drawn on it." Gene looked around. Well, there's a landmark. There were no doors on the rooms along the walls, so he had to go further down the corridor. Here was the first door. There was no devil on it, only curse words. Further on, another one, it was locked from the outside. On the walls were arrows, dates, signatures. Adventure seekers left a reminder of themselves. Further on, a fork in the path. Gene shouted into the darkness again. "Should I turn right or left?" "I don't know." The voice was getting weaker. "Towards where you can see light." "Left, then." He looked for some crack to the outside. A little light entered the corridor. Here it was, the door with the devil. Horned red with black eyes. It wouldn't be a sin to display such a thing in the Hermitage. It turned out very canonical. The door was slightly ajar, so Gene had to lean on it. The room beyond the door was empty. There were some pipes along the walls. He looked closer. A figure was lying by the far wall, very small. "Well, I'm here. What happened?" Gene said as cheerfully as possible. "I'm here, and my leg hurts. I fell off a pipe. There's a kitten sitting on the floor." He was just a child, a boy about 6 or 7 years old. Next to him was a backpack, a white shirt, a vest, and trousers. A schoolboy, Gene thought. The child's foot was unnaturally twisted. No need for a fortune teller, a fracture. There was nothing to think about. "How did you end up here? What's your name?" "Stevie," the boy said. "I went after the kitten. He climbed in here, and I wanted to save him. They say homeless people live here, and I climbed after him, and he went onto the pipe. I wanted to get him down. He jumped. I fell, and my leg got stuck. It hurts now." The boy spoke quickly, incoherently. His voice trembled. His face was tear-stained and very hurt. "Hi, Stevie. I'm Uncle Gene. I'll help you now. Let me carry you out of here now. Your leg seems to be broken. You'll have to go to the hospital." The boy got scared. "Oh, Mom will be upset." Well, thought Jean, he's thinking about his mom, about the kitten, but he didn't react to his broken leg. "We'll call a doctor now, and he'll tell us if you need to go to the hospital or not. And I think Mom will just be happy that you're okay. Come here." Jean held out his hands to embrace the boy. Jean carefully examined the broken leg, as gently, even as tenderly as possible. He instantly realized that the situation required immediate intervention. The child was clearly in pain. He was just holding back tears. But Jean's nerves were starting to fray. He barely remembered first aid lessons. He knew that an injured limb shouldn't be disturbed. Just in case, he decided not to touch it at all, so as not to make it worse. He understood that he needed to get the boy out of there as quickly as possible. "Uncle Gene, please take the kitten. When I get out of the hospital, I'll definitely convince Mom to keep him." The boy almost started crying again, so Jean hastened to calm him down. "We'll find your kitten. Where did you see him?" "He's here. He didn't run away, I think. I deliberately closed the door a little so he wouldn't hide." Jean looked around more carefully. On one of the pipes, the unfortunate kitten was indeed still sitting. Ginger, with floppy ears. He tucked in his paws, covered his tail. His eyes were full of pleasure. Jean stood on one of the pipes and with a light movement caught the kitten. It didn't resist, calmly went into his arms. "Put him in my backpack so he doesn't run away," the boy reasoned. Jean hugged the child, holding him carefully despite his weight. With each step upwards, he felt a growing sense of responsibility, searching for someone in this forgotten place. Just like that, with 2 backpacks on his shoulder, a cat and a boy, Jean came out into the daylight. From here, he decided not to call an ambulance, but to take the boy directly to the hospital. It was faster on foot. After handing Stevie over to the doctors in the emergency room, Jean left his phone number at the reception and was about to go home. The boy's mother had already been called, and she immediately rushed to her son. Stevie patiently waited for her arrival on a couch right in the hallway. Nurses kept appearing next to him. "Uncle Gene!" the boy shouted. Jean came over and nodded. "Uncle Gene, just tell me where to pick up the kitten. As soon as I get better, I'll come for him. My phone number is at the reception. Tell Mum to call me. And will you come visit me?" "If you want, I'll come." "You must come," Stevie said excitedly. "I'll name him Churchill." "Better Chubais," Jean grinned, but the child probably didn't understand his strange humour. In addition to work, this 4-legged happiness had fallen on his head. Jean loved animals. Before, when his mother and grandmother were still alive, they had a constant parade of cats, puppies, hamsters, and even pigeons in their house. They felt sorry for everyone, fed everyone. Jean consciously didn't get pets. He didn't have enough time to care for them. And now it appeared, Churchill. The kitten slept, ate, ran around. In the evening, Jean sat at the table, buried in his laptop. The kitten curled up on his lap and purred. It suddenly felt so warm, so pleasant. Having calmed down, Jean decided that he should visit Stevie after all. Stevie had already been moved to a ward. He was half sitting on the bed, looking at some book. Besides him, there were 3 other boys. One had parents sitting with him, another had an elderly woman, probably his grandmother. Another boy was packing his things, apparently going home. Stevie's bed was directly opposite the door. Jean took a few steps towards the boy who was distracted from his book. "Well, hello. How are you feeling?" Jean smiled. "Hi," the boy beamed. "How's Churchill?" "He's fine, running around everywhere now. And how are you? Did you break your leg?" "Mom says they'll let me go home soon, but I'll have to lie down a lot. She went out to talk to the doctor now, so they'll let us go home sooner. She'll be back soon. And when they let me go home, we'll come for the kitten. Mom already agreed. She was even happy." Stevie spoke just as quickly, trying to tell everything in one breath. "Well, how are you doing here, little one? Haven't you gotten bored?" A voice came from behind Jean, and he turned around. A woman approached the bed. She leaned her hands on the back, looked at her son, and then at Jean. A round, slightly tanned face, thin-rimmed glasses. Dark hair, held back with a clip, fell from her shoulders. She was strictly dressed, a hospital gown over her suit. It wasn't difficult to recognize Marina in this woman. She hadn't changed, only she looked somehow bigger. Perhaps the jacket and gown gave her that appearance, or perhaps her slight stoop had straightened and her shoulders had broadened. Jean was momentarily flustered, cleared his throat and asked, "Marina, how are you here? Did you come to see your son? I didn't expect to see you." "So you're Uncle Jean who saved the kitten. So, I guess—" Jean grinned. Marina's tone seemed condescending, even friendly. "Mom, do you know Uncle Jean?" Stevie watched what was happening with curiosity. "Yes, he's my classmate. We even went to the same institute." Jean looked at Stevie. "We were friends for a long time, actually." Marina hurried to tell her son that he would be released from the hospital the day after tomorrow and wouldn't go to school for a while. "I'll go then. I still live in the same place. When you're ready to pick up the kitten, call me. I left my number." "Yes, of course I'll call." Jean said goodbye to Stevie and Marina again and quickly left the ward. Today had become even stranger. Yesterday, all these adventures with finding the child, saving the kitten. And today, Marina. Could fate have played such a cruel trick? Jean had no doubt about the existence of Providence. He believed that everything was predetermined. But like this... He felt mixed emotions, happy to see Marina, but at the same time sickened, because he realized he hadn't seen her for many years. He couldn't help but remember those happy times when they spent so much time together, laughed, did silly things, and supported each other. Jean daydreamed on the way home, thinking the meeting would be the beginning of a new close connection between them. But at the same time, he understood that too much had changed, and maybe it was impossible to go back to what was before. Remembering Marina, he smiled and felt a surge of warmth and nostalgia. They were both so young and full of hopes and dreams for the future. They got into law school simply because they both passed the entrance exams. At the time, they thought there was nothing better than being together constantly, studying and coming home at the same time, preparing for tests together, taking exams. That's how it was for the first 6 months. After the first semester, long weekends began. The weather had been freezing for several days, and it wasn't going to improve. They had to spend all their time indoors. His mother was still living in the apartment then too. Although she didn't interfere with the young couple, they rarely crossed paths. They quickly left for school or the cinema. Now, the constant presence of people in the apartment began to irritate Marina. Living together didn't seem so cheerful to her. Responsibilities suddenly fell on her. Although her mother cooked for the whole family, Marina, out of politeness and a desire to learn, also cooked something interesting, trying out recipes from large cookbooks. it always turned out differently. Some dishes were successful, others could be safely thrown away without even tasting them. At school, she could eat in the cafeteria or eat what she brought with her. Now Marina felt some pressure from her boyfriend. He didn't directly tell her to clean, but it was noticeable in his behavior that he expected it from her. And the girl tried her best to meet his expectations. And so time went on. Study was replaced by the room by the kitchen. There was nothing cheerful or romantic in this shared life, nothing that Jean had promised himself and her. Sometimes she thought that this was what love was like, practical, without unnecessary tenderness. Everything as an independent woman desired. Relationships without excessive passion and romance, without scandals and long arguments. Everyone just had duties and obligations. The main thing was to do everything according to the rules, then there would be happiness. At other times, thoughts visited her that Jean was simply taking advantage of her. He'd ask her to take notes for him, sometimes even write things. And what did he give her? Sometimes gifts on very rare holidays. There were times when he forgot to congratulate her. With each day, there were more and more such thoughts, but they continued to live together. Marina also maintained order, cooked. There were also thoughts that this was how it would be now, perhaps for the rest of her life. Marina would continue to obey her duties and live without love and passion. She adhered to the rules and accepted her fate. But in her soul, she felt emptiness and dissatisfaction. She dreamed of more, of real love and a feeling of happiness. She continued to endure all her thoughts and doubts because that was her reality. She, Marina, an excellent student, one could say a beauty. She had so many ambitions: to study law, become a prosecutor, wear a blue uniform suit, and handle court cases. She wanted to go to work from 8 to 6, 5 days a week. Come home into a large armchair with a throw, taking off her high heels on the way, feeling her legs relax. She would throw the throw over her knees, take a book, or turn on the TV. She would cook what she wanted or order food delivery. She would brew tea, drink it slowly, looking out the window, having changed into soft home pajamas. A huge bed. Marina dreamed of a large bed with a carved headboard and a canopy like a princess. She would fall asleep, and in the morning she would go back to work. Marina's weekends would be just as measured. Walks in the fresh air, then she would pop into a couple of stores. She would buy herself puzzles or embroidery to occupy her evenings. Just a dream vacation. And in the summer, she would go to the sea. Living far in the north, she didn't know what the sea was like until she was 20, but she longed to go there. Her grandmother, who used to live by the sea, the Baltic Sea, a cold one, told her about it. It rages, it's boundless, it attracted her, it felt like home. Marina dreamed of the sea. Jean suddenly invited her during the summer holidays after their first year. They had a whole free month after the semester and practice. Marina agreed, but it turned out it wasn't cheap at all. But they went on the upper bunks of an old third-class train carriage with huge backpacks. They took everything they could so they wouldn't have to buy things there, wouldn't have to spend money. They lived there for 5 days. They lived in a tent between a sanatorium and a wild beach. Every day they went swimming. Once they climbed a mountain. They had a boring vacation. But for Marina, it was magical. She didn't want to go anywhere else but to the sea. Lie, sunbathe, swim. They didn't argue there. They didn't share anything. They just enjoyed the vacation as much as they could. And after that trip, Marina understood clearly. She would go to the sea every year, with money. She wanted to drink coffee in a seaside cafe, eat all those southern fruits, go on some excursion. They went to the sea again during the holidays. Then they could afford an inexpensive hotel and coffee on the shore. After all, Jean fulfilled her dream. He was the first to show her the sea in all its glory. Jean returned to the apartment puzzled. His old feelings didn't just stir, maybe St. Petersburg or Moscow, or maybe south to the sea. Something incredible happened today. She was here. She had a son. He went to school here. That meant she had been in the city all this time. In such a small city, he had never met her. If it weren't for yesterday's incident, he would never have known. He reasoned like this, sometimes aloud, sometimes in his thoughts. Well, she's here. And what now? Will you run to declare your love, that you were wrong, that you were a complete fool? She probably has a husband. Do you think she'll forgive you now, throw herself into your arms, cry with happiness, and you'll live happily ever after? So why didn't she throw herself at you in the ward if she missed you? And why didn't you throw yourself at her? You could have at least said hi. What will you do now? The doorbell pulled him out of his thoughts and reasoning. Jean even flinched. He put out and then threw away his cigarette. Could it be Marina? Yes, she was standing on the doorstep with her umbrella unfolded, so serious and businesslike. She didn't fit into the decor of this apartment. She was too young for it, too. Now she wore high-heeled boots. Before, her mother didn't allow it, so she wouldn't look short next to her daughter. Now black patent leather boots added another 10 centimeters to her height, lengthening her legs in narrow trousers. A narrow fitted burgundy raincoat gleamed with raindrops. A scarf. She didn't wear hats before either, saying her face was too round and she looked like a mushroom. But now she had found a solution, an elegant beret. Jean stared at her for an indecently long time. He didn't immediately remember that he should invite his guest into the apartment. "Will you come in?" He invited her with a gesture. "I came to say thank you." Marina stepped across the threshold of the apartment. Jean saw a painfully familiar scene. Here she was, Marina. Just like before, she took off her raincoat first, then her beret, shook off invisible dust specks, adjusted her trousers, and put down her bag. "I'm so glad you were there. Stevie is such a restless one," she paused. "He climbed into the basement, said he wanted to save the kitten." As if hearing he was being discussed, the ginger culprit darted out to the people. Marina felt a little relieved. Here it was, the reason to come here and have this awkward conversation. "Who's this handsome one?" She addressed the animal. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" She said this to Jean. "Yes, he's a handsome one." "Tea? Let's have tea since I'm here." Jean got out the mugs, filled the kettle with water. It was awkward doing all this in silence. "How is Stevie?" he asked to break the ice. "Nothing serious?" "No, thankfully everything turned out fine. What saved him was that you were there. Who knows who else hangs around in that dump?" Marina winced with disgust. "Oh, come on, no one would have just walked by." Jean waved it off. "I was very surprised to see you in the ward. I thought you were long gone from this city." "I left. I lived by the sea for about 3 years, working there on a rotational basis. And then my mother died. I came back, started dealing with the apartment here. Stevie grew up. I sent him to kindergarten here, and now to school." "Do you have green tea?" "Yes, I remember you like it. I have some." "It's strange that I never ran into you. Everyone's in plain sight here." "And I'm not a lawyer. What would I do without a degree?" Marina grinned. "I'm studying elementary school teaching by correspondence." Back then, in the past, the young couple moved in together. They thought everything was ahead of them, that only days of boundless pleasure awaited them. They knew for sure that it wouldn't be like everyone else. The only mistake was that everyone thinks that. and everyone ends up the same way. "I want freedom," he said one day. "I can't stand seeing these walls anymore. Let's at least do some renovations." "All you want is entertainment. What about me? Pay for everything, carry bags, and spend a ton of free time on it. I'm already working and I'm still studying. And what is there to renovate? Nothing seems to be broken." "I would at least wallpaper our room to make it look fresher. These grey stripes with flowers are haunting my nightmares." "The flowers are fine, and you won't be able to wallpaper properly anyway." Marina withdrew. It seemed like a trifle, but why did such trifles happen every time? One moment someone was saying she couldn't wallpaper properly, the next she'd oversalt the soup or overcook the cutlet. "A fool won't understand," Marina repeated to herself in such situations. Who was Jean then? He said it with such a look, as if he had caught her in something terrible, some mortal sin. Jean's mother loved Marina, often took her side if she heard the young couple arguing, but it didn't look encouraging. The older woman would lecture her son for saying the wrong thing. She remained his mother no matter what. He was her own flesh and blood. When she moved to the dacha, it got even worse. Marina used to find at least a semblance of protection. She could smooth over conflicts. But here there was nowhere to go. They were alone together in the large apartment, alone with their problems. They had to build their family life themselves. It was changing. Every day Marina heard that she couldn't do some small thing right. With each time, she got more upset. The person she loved pointed out all the flaws he saw to her face, sometimes even out of context, just in passing. She wanted to tell him the joyful news right after school. Today Marina stayed home. She didn't go to classes. Her health was failing. She had a fever in the morning, and nausea bothered her all day. Marina found out what caused it a couple of days ago. Because she felt unwell, she went to the clinic, and they immediately sent her for an ultrasound. And there, on the image, was a 4-week-old fetus. A completely indistinguishable spot on the screen for Marina proved that her discomfort would last much longer. She didn't tell Jean right away. There was no suitable occasion. He was staying late at work, wanting to get as much done as possible, looking for materials to add to his diploma thesis. And today he was supposed to come straight home after classes. His mood was clearly not conducive. He got under the blanket. While the intro was playing, Marina asked, "Do you think we'll have beautiful children?" "Probably not. And I think they'll be quite good. Do you want a boy or a girl?" "I don't want anyone." "What kind of stupid questions are these? I don't want to discuss this. We're at least 10 years away from having children if we don't break up. Let's watch a movie." And they watched a movie. The idea of telling him about the child no longer occurred to Marina. But another one did. In the morning, they woke up as usual. Marina went to the kitchen, made toast, and brewed tea. Jean started getting ready for the institute, and then for work. "Are you going to classes today?" he asked. "No, I'm going to the clinic today. I'll get a sick note. I still have a slight fever." "I'll be home around 7. Call me if anything." And they said goodbye at the door, as usual. Marina closed the door and went into the room. She changed, took a black travel bag from the sofa drawer. At the bottom, she put 2 jackets, several pairs of trousers, sweaters, and 2 shirts. She packed a small handbag, took her cosmetics from the bathroom, and a few bottles of her perfume. From her jewellery box, she took out her few pieces of jewellery, a ring, a silver pendant, a bracelet, and earrings. Her father had given her the ring shortly before he died. It was too small now, so it hung on a chain. Marina sometimes wore it around her neck. Jean had given her the pendant and earrings right after they started living together. The bracelet was from Jean's mother, a talisman with her zodiac sign. She turned the jewelry in her hands. Marina put on the chain with the ring, put the rest back in the jewelry box, and returned it to its place. She sat down on the bed and took out her phone. She scrolled down to the contact Gene. He was still saved as Gene in her phone. She never wanted to save him as darling or sweetheart. Even more, she was annoyed by the cliché bunny or kitty. She pressed delete. The contact went into the trash, and the trash was immediately emptied. Marina stood up, exhaled, and left the apartment with her bag. That same day, she submitted her application for withdrawal. Just like that, 6 months before graduating from the institute for personal reasons. They promised to send the documents by mail to her place of residence, but whose address was unclear. Marina went home before the institute, left her bag with her mother. Her mother wasn't home. That was good. Her mother wouldn't have understood everything that was happening. In time, of course, everything would have worked out between them, and her mother would definitely have helped with the child. But Marina was ashamed that she had chosen the wrong man, that she had gotten pregnant so irresponsibly that she couldn't tell him about it. She drew conclusions. She bought a train ticket to St. Petersburg at the station, then went south from there. Now everything was behind her, except for her own feelings. Marina came back 2 days later. Jean had already come home from work and fed the cat, and then the intercom rang. She was alone, feeling nervous. "I came for the cat." They put the kitten in a carrier. She was about to leave. "I wanted to thank you again for Stevie. You saved the most precious thing I have. Is there anything I can do for you?" "I already said it's fine, but if you want, can I ask you a favor?" "Anything." "Let's meet again on the weekend, somewhere in a cafe or take a walk." Jean spoke with pauses, but confidently. Marina pursed her lips and quickly turned away. "Okay, we'll meet. I'll call. I need to see when I have time." Jean locked the door behind her. It didn't get easier, as he had expected. On the contrary, something felt heavier inside. A lump of air seemed to rise in his throat, making it hard to breathe. For several days, Jean wasn't himself. He thought about what he would say to Marina. At first he knew exactly. He would ask why she left, why she didn't answer the phone, where she lived. But the closer the meeting got, the more he realized. What would that information give him? And then what? He would learn the reasons. But could he fix anything? And did he even want to fix it? His thoughts became more and more confused. The clear plan for the meeting was lost amidst reflection and uncertainty. Finally, he decided, let whatever happens, happen. He just wanted to see Marina again. "You know, I didn't believe you'd come until the last moment," he smiled when Marina got out of the taxi. "I promised, and I didn't really have any other plans. I wanted to invite you for a walk in the park, and then maybe go out for dinner. There's a wonderful new cafe on the square." "That's a good idea. The weather is just right for walking today. The last autumn days without grey skies and rain. It might even start soon." Jean offered his arm, inviting Marina to walk towards the park. The weather had indeed been good for a couple of days. No rain, sometimes a bright but already cold sun peeked out. Leaden clouds sometimes covered it, sometimes disappeared completely. There were a lot of people around. All the city's residents wanted to capture the last fine days. Marina and Jean walked arm in arm. He used to dislike walking like that, but Marina really liked it. Now he suggested it himself. They talked about the weather, the large number of people, which slightly irritated both of them. They walked along the embankment of a small river. The main attraction of the park was a bridge across it. Here, newlyweds and lovers left ribbons and locks with their names, securing their love. Jean noticed a brand new shiny lock, Eugene and Marina. "Look," he said, "it seems like a good sign, finding our names." "Oh, really? What a coincidence," Marina exhaled. "Why did you leave?" Jean finally decided to ask the question that bothered him the most. He knew he had to ask. "I got pregnant," Marina began. "What?" Jean interrupted. "What do you mean, Stevie? No, how old is he?" "No, that didn't work out well," Marina quickly said. "Stevie was born later. After I left, so much happened." "Tell me, I want to know. Was I to blame?" "I was to blame. I took my documents and left for Anapa. I had a little money. I rented a room in a dormitory there. A guy lived next door. He helped me around the house sometimes, helped me with work. And at 26 weeks, I had a miscarriage. From stress. I got into debt then, only worked at a loss. Sometimes I couldn't even pay for the room. That's when I completely broke down. And this guy, Maxime, invited me to live with him, asked me to marry him. So I agreed. Stevie was born. We lived normally. He didn't hurt me. He told me to go study part-time. There was always money. Max did everything he could. And what happened now? And then we broke up, peacefully, calmly. He said he had fallen madly in love, and I had never really adored him. He didn't abandon his son. He promised to help. So it was peaceful. And then such news. Mom died. And I thought that was a reason to come back here. Jean was silent, and Marina said nothing. They stood, leaning on the railing of the bridge. Jean looked at the names on the locks. He wondered how many of them were still together. He remembered how they once went on an excursion. They had to climb a mountain for almost a kilometre to visit a cave of wishes. The weather was awful then. He didn't want to go anywhere. But the excursion had to happen, so in the morning they went to the bus stop. They drove on a wet road, then climbed an untrodden path. So in the cave, Jean had only one wish, to get back to the room with the heater and hot tea as soon as possible. "Remember we went to the Cave of Wishes?" he asked. "Of course, we froze so much I'll remember it for the rest of my life," Marina smiled. "Did you make a wish?" "Yes. And you?" "I wished to get home as soon as possible. I was frozen like a puppy then." "Well, fancy that. It came true right away. Remember, we cancelled half the route because of the fog then? We didn't cross the ridge. We went straight home after the wishes." "Yes, I didn't connect that then. I was more happy that I wouldn't have to freeze. And what did you wish for? Did it come true?" "It certainly didn't come true right away. I've always had only one wish, and it might still come true." "What is it?" "If I tell you, it definitely won't come true." Jean smiled. The conversation, which had been about a difficult life story, suddenly shifted to an ordinary friendly tone. The familiar, cheerful Marina with her funny superstitions. She joked, talked about Stevie, about the kitten, that Stevie wouldn't leave his side. They had dinner at the cafe. All the time they discussed what had happened to each of them during this time. The conversation flowed as if there hadn't been 4 years of living together, such a difficult breakup, a long separation. As if one of them had gone on vacation and had just returned and was sharing impressions. "Will you come in?" Jean asked when they were passing the abandoned academy. "Do you think that's a good idea?" "I know it's a good idea. I already lost you once because of my foolishness. Don't think that now is the right time. And I think, on the contrary, we missed the right time long ago." She had a long train ride. She had very little money with her, all she had managed to earn. The direction wasn't very clear. Before, she had only been to southern cities as a tourist, and St. Petersburg was something incomprehensibly mysterious to her. She had thought before about what she would do if she had to live in such a large city. The first horror for her seemed to be the distances. In the city she was leaving, the longest bus route could be covered in an hour and a half. The thought that it could take an hour to get to work by the fastest transport didn't fit in her head. The second horror was the number of people. Suppose she got a job and the building had 25 floors, and on each floor there were hundreds of people. How could she remember everyone? The mysterious crisscrossed courtyards, the noisy avenues scared her. No, Marina definitely didn't want to go to the capital. She wasn't drawn to that hustle and bustle. But she liked the summer excitement of primary. There were a lot of people there too, but they all seemed simple and down to earth, like locals, as if everyone knew your name and would come up and say hello any moment. Life always reigned there. There were always people, some replaced by others. Marina was heading towards this very coast. She arrived early in the morning. She immediately went looking for housing. There was an advertisement on an old, dilapidated house, room for rent. This house was built back in Soviet times for specialists of some factory. Marina even participated in the construction from the factory. No one ever received apartments, but former workers remained after the collapse of the Union, each with their own small room. The house was corridor type. On both sides of the entrance were doors to apartments. Some were one-room apartments. People were lucky. They got a finished apartment as property. Marina had a standard 2-room apartment, but each room had its own owner. Kitchen and bathroom were shared. There were also 3- and 4-room apartments. The system was the same there. Living in a 2-room apartment was quite convenient. The neighbour, Maxim, was a young guy. The room belonged to his mother. When she died, he stayed. He paid attention, helped her carry out the old sofa and assemble a new one, did repairs in the apartment, fixing the electricity, changing the faucet. This had to be done very often. The house was built in a hurry. The materials were not the best. Pipes burst repeatedly. One New Year, Marina and Maxim celebrated in jackets and by candlelight. Not because it was romantic, but because the power was also out in the entire district due to an accident. Marina settled in and slowly began to make the small room her home. The landlady, a very kind soul, left the girl all the appliances, old towels, and even a set of new bed linen. And Marina started living alone for the first time in her life without anyone's help. She wanted to get a job, but when they found out her condition, they politely refused. She took a temporary part-time job as a salesperson. The work was hard, the pay was low, but it was paid on time, and it was enough for her. The only thing that scared her was the thought of the upcoming birth. No one would give her maternity leave. She would have to wait for the allowance, which was below the subsistence minimum. With each day, this thought became clearer in Marina's head. That day she came home from work particularly exhausted. She had been carrying boxes from the warehouse, running up and down stairs. Without changing, she collapsed onto the bed. She wanted to close her eyes and pass out immediately. But she felt a strong heaviness in her lower abdomen. Everything ached and hurt. She was very thirsty. Marina tried to get up, to go to the kitchen for water, but the movement suddenly brought sharp pain throughout her body. She got to her feet, opened the door, and took a step into the common corridor. Maxim caught her by the arms halfway to the kitchen. She didn't even notice that she was screaming in pain. He was the one who called an ambulance. He was the one who met her from the hospital and was by her side every day, saying that what had happened was not a sentence, that she needed to live on. And she lived, not with him, but just nearby. Maxim stayed overnight more and more often, and then they merged the apartment altogether. So much happened during that time, good and bad. Marina bounced between part-time jobs, sometimes as a salesperson, sometimes as an administrator in a cafe. Marina perceived the news of her pregnancy as a miracle. Although no one talked about the traumatic consequences, the thought that she might not be able to give birth again sometimes came over Marina. Stevie was born a strong boy. As soon as he learned to talk, he reasoned like an adult. He calmly accepted the news that his mum and dad wouldn't live together. He only asked Maxim, "You'll still love me, won't you? Maybe even more? And I'll pick you up for holidays." She was in this apartment again. Everything was the same here, just as she remembered it. But something had changed. Outwardly, it was imperceptible, but stepping across the threshold, she immediately felt it. It had become empty here. Too much free space. Everything felt so uninhabited. There was no human warmth in this apartment. A dark corridor, the kitchen just as dark a room. The windows here always blocked the light. The light that Jean turned on here every evening was a pathetic imitation, a parody of the sun. And then she came. She stepped onto this floor again, and circles of warmth and sunlight seemed to spread from her. The hanger where her raincoat hung was illuminated, the shelf where her boots stood. She walked down the corridor, and a trail followed her, as if a sunbeam followed her everywhere. Jean let her go ahead and fell under these almost magical charms himself. He was fascinated by how she managed to fill these stuffy corners with air, how she managed to touch things and immediately fill them with life. She took a cup of tea, and its aroma spread throughout the kitchen as if she was dispersing it with her breath. Her cup clinked against the saucer, but she continued to hold the thin handle. Jean touched her fingers with the back of his hand, grasped her hand, and brought it to his lips. She smelled of something sweet, cream probably. And she also smelled of cold, steam from the tea, the receding autumn. She was so beautiful now, the abandoned apartment had become so bright. Marina went into the room, walked up to the table, and leaned her palms on it. She looked out the window, thinking about something. It was getting dark outside, the wind was cold, rain had started, and behind her was Jean. He quietly came up close and put his arms around her shoulders. So quietly, as if afraid to scare her away, or trying to remember every second of this. Before she turned around, he managed to say, "I'm sorry." In the morning she left. She had her own home, a child to take care of, and a job, and now a cat too. Now no one held anyone back, no one begged anyone to stay for long. They didn't linger in bed, postponing the last morning minutes. He didn't ask when they could meet again, if he could even count on a meeting. He walked her to the door, put her in a taxi. He himself needed to gather his thoughts, finish the work left over for the weekend. How tired he was of this aching feeling of uniformity in the apartment. After she left, everything became dark again. On his things, some of the scent of her hands still lingered, and it seemed particles of the light that had streamed behind her yesterday. But the rest was just as gloomy and empty. A cold, empty apartment. Jean opened a real estate website called Some Agency. "I want to sell an apartment. 3 rooms, central location, 72 square meters. The building is old, but not for demolition. No renovations. I want to sell it as soon as possible." The girl on the other end of the line said something about a discount, about how the apartment could be sold faster by paying for promotion. They agreed on noon. An agent came, with a couple of other people. They wrote something in a notebook, then on their phones. They signed documents, took a prepayment for the work, and left. And Jean himself couldn't believe he was doing this. But he knew, if he hesitated now, he might miss everything again. A family was found in 2 weeks. They came to see the apartment, asked why there was such a discount, why they were selling urgently. And, convinced that the building wasn't falling apart, they agreed to the purchase. He called Marina the next day and arranged to meet in the same cafe in the evening. "Please come. There might not be another time." Only afterwards did he think he might have seriously scared her with those words. Who knows what she might think? But on the other hand, he had said everything correctly. There might not be another chance. He worried for nothing. Marina didn't look alarmed by his state, but she came to the meeting. "I'm selling the apartment. I want to move far away from here, maybe south." "You decided this so quickly? Why all of a sudden?" "So I don't change my mind. I want to get out of this vicious cycle. I want you to come with me. Don't refuse right away. I know it might sound strange. It's just that we met now. Everything happened so suddenly. What is this, if not a second chance for both of us? We can still start over. We can still build what didn't happen." "Jean, do you understand that this isn't a one-day decision? Work, school. I have an apartment here too. I already moved once like that, and everything brought me back. I'm asking you to think about it. I'm asking you very seriously." "I can guarantee you won't regret this decision. I can swear on my knees." Such big words. Swear, guarantee. But we're not 15 anymore, remember? "And I didn't promise you anything at 15, but I can now. When I saw you again, it was like dust fell out of my eyes. Do you understand? I saw the world, the apartment, the old job. I thought, okay, I'll start a new life. But I realized I can't do it without you. It will stay the same, no matter where I go. I'm glad we met, and I don't regret anything. But I can't make such a decision right away either." They left the cafe in silence, together. They agreed that Marina would think everything over and call when she had decided. "She just gently turned me down," he thought. "She'll call in a week, apologize, cite work or school, stress for the child. And you, Eugene Alexandrovich Miller, will continue to exist with a sense of duty fulfilled, sometimes remembering how you messed up again." But his reasoning was unfounded. They were already walking past his house. She stopped at the turn into the courtyard. "I want to leave with you, I really do. We have to try, otherwise we won't forgive ourselves." Summer this year was very early. Spring passed quickly. There were no prolonged rains. There was hardly any winter either. In all 3 months, Marina didn't even wear her winter coat, managing with a windbreaker. They had to turn on the air conditioning. The house got so warm that it was unbearable to be inside even at night. Their house was large, but cosy. On the first floor were the living room, the kitchen dining room, and the children's room. The living room was furnished with soft armchairs and a small sofa. It was always cozy and bright here. A modern kitchen for cooking quickly without wasting time. In the dining room, the walls were panelled with wood, and the windows opened directly onto the terrace. The terrace was a good place to relax in spring or early autumn. In summer, it was a bit hot here, but comfortable at night. This was their family's favourite place. Jean worked here in the evenings. Marina would join him if he stayed up late. She would sit next to him on the small sofa. From the terrace you could see the clearing near the house, the nearby forest. Their house was on a hill. The streetlights below allowed them to see a piece of the sea. They didn't go to the sea here. This was for tourists. From April to November, it was always crowded. The bay was always dirty. They drove about 50 kilometres from the house to a guest house. They rested there not only from work and household chores, but also from tourists and neighbours. Jean took 2 days off. They decided to spend the weekend on vacation. Jean knew a beach where there were rarely any tourists, but the sea was shallow, without sudden drops. The water was clean. Stevie was always happy about joint trips for vacation. He stayed in the sea longer than he should have. And upon returning from the beach, Jean would buy him ice cream or cotton candy. They walked in the coastal parks, along the embankments. In the evening, they went to the local markets. Now he and Marina were lying on towels. Stevie was splashing near the shore. "I wish to spend the rest of my life with you," Marina suddenly said, "every year and on every birthday." "And why did you decide to tell me now?" Jean smiled slightly. "It came true. Now I can."